911 operators received a terrible phone call in January of 2001. The caller had called to inform them that a young mother named Pamela Shelley had shot and killed herself. After the autopsy had been done, the forensic pathologist determined Pamela Shelley's death to be a suicide. However, neither Pamela's family nor the police believed the results. The case went cold, but one tenacious detective made it a point of duty to keep up with the investigation after years of questioning Pamela's apparent death. With a little assistance from a true crime television program, the case was reopened. Hello and welcome to Mystery Detective. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more crime cases. Today's case takes us to the small town of Cuero, Texas, which was shaken by the death of Pamela Shelley. Pamela Jean Shelley was born on the 25th of July 1969 in Houston, Texas. But she was raised in the quaint community of Ashdown, Arkansas, which had a population of 4,500 at the time. Pamela comes from a family that worked hard. Her mother worked at a nursing facility while her father drove a truck for lodging. She also had a brother and a sister. Pamela Shelley was described as being extremely kind and outgoing with everyone around her. When Pamela Shelley was 16 years old, she met her first husband, Jesse Suggs, who was 20 years old at the time. They discussed their future plans of getting married one day. However, Pamela's father wanted her to complete high school before any other thing. So, following her high school graduation, she and Jesse got married immediately. Not long after, they became parents, giving birth to Kayla, their first child and daughter. Just 4 years into their marriage, Pamela and Jesse began to have problems. Jesse frequently used narcotics to get high, and eventually his drug problems caused him to lead a life of crime. Pamela and Jesse had an on and off relationship for a while before finally getting a divorce. In the summer of 1991, Pamela Shelley got married to another man by the name of Gary. They conceived a child they named Dustin. The marriage lasted just a year, after which she briefly moved back in with Jesse, her ex-husband, before finally moving in with her parents. Some years later, Pamela Shelley reconnected with Ronnie Hendricks, a childhood acquaintance. She and Ronnie always seemed to click, but they hadn't spoken in over a decade. After they rekindled their relationship, Ronnie proposed to her and invited her and the kids to come live with him in Cuero, Texas, to which Pamela agreed. In the summer of 2000, she and her son, Dustin alongside Ronnie, then traveled to Cuero by car for 8 hours. Pamela's daughter, Kayla, was to join them few months later. The family of Ronnie Hendricks resided in Cuero, Texas. According to Ronnie's mother, Deborah, everything was going well with them until Kayla moved in. She said, Kayla altered the entire dynamic in the house, making her son Ronnie to frequently get into an argument with her because he would always push her to assist around the house. Deborah and Ronnie claimed that Kayla also insisted on her and her mother returning to Arkansas so she could be with her father. Ronnie and Pamela became at odds virtually every day until horror struck on the 6th of January 2001. Ronnie Hendrick claimed he was on the porch of their home on the 6th of January 2001 when he heard a gunshot from inside. At exactly 5 o'clock, he dialed 911, and not long, the DeWitt County Police arrived at the scene. On getting inside, the police and the EMTs found Pamela Shelley unresponsive on the bathroom floor. Her right temple had been shot, the gun was on the counter, and there was blood all over. Ronnie Hendrick was informed by the EMTs that it would take them an hour to reach the closest hospital. Ronnie promised to accompany them and said he knew how to get there more quickly by taking the back roads. Pamela wasn't in a good state, but she was still alive. However, she was declared brain dead in the hospital on January 7 after being put on life support. Jesse, Pamela's ex-husband, arrived at the hospital and picked up the kids to take them back to Arkansas. The medical examiner determined that Pamela's death was a suicide on January 8, 2001. Given that the gunshot wound made very close contact with the skin, it was established that it was self-inflicted. However, Sheriff Carl Bowen, who was placed in charge of the case, rejected the suicide theory. Sheriff Bowen had a conversation with Jesse Suggs, who confessed that he and Pamela's relationship was quite rough because he couldn't get his act right. When asked when he last saw Pamela, Jesse said they had both shared a bed the night before she went for Texas. He further explained that Pamela had intended to return with his children on January 6, and that he had traveled to Texas to bring them back to Arkansas. Jesse was aware of Ronnie, Pamela, and Kayla's constant issues. As part of the investigation, Jesse agreed to take a polygraph, which he successfully passed. Since Pamela Shelley was shot when Jesse was 800 miles away in Arkansas at his mother's house, he was ruled out as a suspect. The next person the investigators had a chat with was Ronnie Hendrick. He told the police that he had been outside on the porch when he heard what appeared to be a gunshot. He then rushed inside and discovered Pamela lying on the floor, bleeding from a head wound. He claimed to have protected 12-year-old Kayla and 9-year-old Dustin from the gruesome scene. Ronnie further acknowledged that Pamela and the kids had packed up their belongings that morning, preparing to return to Arkansas. According to him, Pamela Shelley had been depressed over going back to Arkansas. However, the relocation was compelled by family matters, particularly because of the discord between him and Kayla. Ronnie told the police that Pamela didn't want to return, but had to since she was afraid of losing her children. Despite the autopsy results, the investigators were bothered with the case contradictions. They wondered why Pamela Shelley packed her whole belongings into a car if she wanted to kill herself. Additionally, Ronnie Hendrick's portrayal of a young woman intent on suicide didn't line up with what authorities knew about Pamela Shelley. According to Sheriff Carl Bowen, a former deputy with the DeWitt County Sheriff's Office, Pamela Shelley's death may have been the result of an accident or homicide. In order to find answers, officials requested that Ronnie Hendrick undergo a polygraph test, to which he agreed, but failed to show up for 3 different appointments. He either postponed or simply failed to show up before completely disappearing. The investigation was concluded and the case went cold after the medical examiner determined that suicide was the cause of death. However, 7 years after Pamela Shelley's passing, Sheriff Carl Bowen decided to re-examine the case because he had never believed it was a suicide. The medical examiner nevertheless was still certain that Pamela's autopsy result was correct. Regardless, Sheriff Carl Bowen retrieved Pamela's medical records for a proper and thorough examination. It was discovered that Pamela Shelley often suffered from stress-induced seizures, and she was taking a low-grade antidepressants for it. Sheriff Bowen had a conversation with Kayla, who confessed that Ronnie allegedly attacked her on January 4, 2 days before her mother was found dead. According to Kayla, Ronnie then attacked her mother and blackened her eyes so bad when she defended her from him. They later visited a hospital. Pamela and the children decided that they would inform the medical professionals that Pamela had fallen into a coffee table. After the incident, Pamela made the decision to take the children back to Arkansas on January 6, since that was what they genuinely wanted. After this revelation, in 2008, Sheriff Carl Bowen tracked down Ronnie Hendrick at the county jail. Ronnie had been taken into custody after hitting his girlfriend. He was then asked to retell the incident that occurred on the 6th of January 2001. The police noticed inconsistencies with his stories. He was also asked to take a polygraph exam, which revealed that he was being deceptive. The investigators knew something was fishy, but they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute Ronnie for Pamela's murder. The case, however, went cold again until 4 years later in 2012, when a TV show that investigated cold cases chose to look at Pamela Shelley's case. They sought to examine the gun for DNA and fingerprints. The revelation of the results was startling. Despite the fact that the gun was Ronnie's, neither Pamela nor Ronnie's DNA was found on it. Now, the police and TV program thought the pistol had been cleaned of any form of DNA. At this point, Sheriff Carl Bowen was getting assured that Pamela didn't commit suicide. In August 2012, he went ahead to have a second conversation with Pamela's ex-husband, Jesse Suggs, and his mother, Shirley. Shirley admitted to the sheriff that when Pamela was in Cairo, Texas, she and Jesse had secretly been communicating with a burner phone. When asked if she believed Pamela had killed herself, Shirley declared that she believed Ronnie Hendricks was the one who had shot her. According to Jesse Suggs, he and Pamela had a phone conversation just 30 minutes before she was shot. He claimed to have heard Ronnie enter the room, grab the phone, and told Jesse that the only way Pamela would be returning home to Arkansas was in a pine box. These revelations were becoming shocking, and a motive was established. The detectives had what they needed to go to a grand jury. The medical examiner soon changed Pamela Shelley's cause of death from suicide to undetermined after learning about Ronnie Hendricks' abuse towards Pamela, Kyla, and other women he had dated. This development is coming 11 years after Pamela Shelley had passed away. In the fall of 2012, Ronnie Hendrick was charged with Pamela Shelley's murder. Finally, 12 years after Pamela's death, Ronnie pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 22 years in prison.